Okay, we got a lot of content to go over, guys. Hey, how you doing? It's gonna be my first time doing a face cam video on this channel in quite a long time, ever since I rebranded to Vars. But hi, nice to meet you. This is the face behind the voice. Although, what is the joke with people constantly asking for a face reveal? Because I've shown my face on Twitter, I've shown it on Instagram, I've even shown it on the community post. How many more times do you need to see my glorious visage before you stop asking? Anyways, yeah, I decided for live commentary videos, anytime I do like a tier list, or if I do just any one of these like just ad-lib discussion content, or if I do like a hot takes discussion, to add my face cam, because I think it gives you guys something more engaging to look at besides just gameplay or like a static image on screen like a website and stuff. We'll try it. It's not perfectly refined. I don't have like a frame or overlay or anything like that. It's just a regular default settings webcam. You can see my room if you like. It's pretty messy. Ignore the laundry over there. But yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to make the kind of add a bit more interactivity to these videos. And speaking of which, we have quite the interactive discussion this time around. They released a lot of stuff today. Personally, I've already read these. I've already read 1, 2, and 3 here. And I've read most of the gameplay previews and things like that, but I feel like for the sake of this video, talking about like the seasons and the battle pass or like swift play and things like that, that's not really up my alley. I can talk about swift play a tiny bit, but in essence it's just like a more condensed version of League, like something that happens a bit faster, faster goal generation, faster objective timers, faster everything. So it's League, but instead of a 30-minute game, it's a 10-minute game essentially. The ranked update season, we can also talk about a bit. Essentially, they're trying to address more of the ranked resets and how 3 splits in a single year is super exhausting. On one hand, it's fun for the players who play all year round and they want to continuously feel like their games actually matter, instead of winning once and then spending the entire rest of the game either holding the rank that you're at or trying to climb higher than before. Or some people are just stuck in MMR hell for the rest of the year. And then they also talk about, MMR reset and rank inflation and things like that, which are discussion topics I've mentioned in the past. But I think for the sake of just keeping things interesting, we're mostly going to be covering the gameplay. If you want links to the other articles, I can link them in the description below. But for this video, for the duration of my commentary, we're going to just be focusing on the Season 1 gameplay preview. They say Season 1 and Season 15. The best way I can put it is that these changes are divisive, to say the least. Based on what school of thought you subscribe to, it can be a really great and refreshing take on League of Legends, because I did mention that, for me at least, my personal experience, I find the game for the past 4 years or so has been really stagnant. Like, not to say they haven't implemented a bunch of different changes, like they've done things like the new Rift format that they did this year, or the Mythic Items update that they did a few years ago that they backpedaled on and things like that. So they have been implementing new ideas and things for the game, but it feels like a slightly different version of League of Legends, whereas I feel like compared to, Season 5, 6, 7, and 8, the game felt noticeably different from one year to the other. Granted, that's when I joined the game. I joined in around late Season 4, so I had, I guess, like the nostalgia. I might have the nostalgia glasses on right now for that, but for me, I think the game has just felt pretty repetitive, and there hasn't been a big enough change for me to be like, okay, this is a new, refreshing take on League of Legends. This is still... It feels like the game just doesn't change enough from year to year to feel like it's a brand new experience. And so I've always been kind of parroting the idea that Riot has to stop being so conservative and try doing things really radically different from what they did before, to just kind of shock the system, to kind of just surprise us and give us something that, as risky as it might be, a new experience of the game. As for how they went about it, I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that sees this as like, oh, this could be super exciting, it can make the game feel very different, but there's another part of me that can't help but think that this is just going to make the problems we have already even worse, under the guise that it's trying to improve them. So we'll go through them one at a time. First things first, the map is becoming very Noxian themed, which at the moment just kind of feels like a red, dark, grim and edgy undertone color overlay slapped on top of it. I hope they do a bit more and make the Rift a bit more interesting visually speaking, but ever since they stopped us from being able to add our own like Rift map skins and like, champion skins and whatnot, I've kind of given up hope that we're gonna see anything but the boring Summoner's Rift we have now. But let's try to be optimistic about it and move on a little bit more. Now, they're going to be adding a new epic monster to the Rift. So we had Void Grubs come in, I think a year ago, or was it this year or last year? I actually don't remember. I'm assuming it's this year. Yeah, when they did the whole Rift change. If you guys hear that, there's a plane flying over my house. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay, anyways, so we're getting another epic monster, and epic monsters are always interesting because they are essentially the MacGuffins of a league game, right? There's something for both teams to focus on and to prioritize and plan and strategize for. Rifttail being for sieging, same with Void Grubs to a lesser extent. Baron being for combat and sieging, of course. Otacon is specifically for combat, which is interesting because there are two versions of him. Depending on how bloody the game has been, in the first 14 minutes, and by bloody I mean there are a lot of kills, a lot of deaths that happened in the first 14 minutes, you're gonna get one version of Otacon and then the other. The ruinous Otacon is if you have a high action game. If you kill him, everyone on the team gets amplified effects from all other epic monster rewards. So dragons, Void Grubs, Baron buff, things like that, Elder Dragon. And then he also drops a field of items that you can pick up that give you experience, and then also a permanent stacking adaptive force. So you can treat this essentially like Infernal Drake, basically. Pretty good, because it does, like, if the game is already being very violent and there's a lot of killing and fighting going on, this will only be another reason for you to keep killing and fighting everyone as you go about the game. In a more mild or passive game, which typically is associated with pro play because there's just not as many kills in the early game for pro play, you get Voracious Otacon, which is, oh boy, this one is kind of a spicy one, if we're being charitable here. Oh yeah, do you guys like my mug? I love it. It's so big too. The Voracious Otacon makes it so your team gets a one-time instant respawn identical to Akshan's passive, so if you die you just respawn immediately. And then you also get permanently increased gold on champion takedowns for the remainder of the game. I don't know how much because it's just, a gameplay preview, they're not giving us the actual numbers yet. But I would assume it's, maybe an extra 50 to 100 gold more per kill, which does add up over time if you think about it. Now, when it comes to the Voracious Otacon, they say that, or just Otacon in general, he spawns between Herald and Baron, and it says that Baron Nashor's time pushes back to 25 minutes. My question is, does Otacon despawn if you don't kill him to make room for Baron? Or does he stay on the map until you kill him and then make room for Baron? By 25 minutes, an instant respawn's not the worst thing in the game, given the fact that, death timers are still relatively tolerable. But if you wait until you kill Otacon by 35 minutes or 30 minutes for example, where death timers start climbing into 45, 50, 55, 60 second mark, this could be game ending. If your team engages in a 5v5 against the enemy team and you both trade 4 for 4, but the enemy team just took down Otacon, a 4 for 4 goes down to a 0 for 4, in which case you basically lose. My hope is that they make Otacon despawn if you don't kill him fast enough, kind of like how Rifttail despawns if you don't kill her fast enough to make room for Baron, since if some teams can manipulate that to wait until they get Otacon later, and then go for a game-ending push by essentially turning a 5v5 into however many extra teammates you get from sacrificing 1 for 1. To be fair, this does tie in with the clause of if there's not many kills that happened in the early game, then you get this version, which implies that the game is somewhat in an even state, right? Like if you have no kills on either side or if you don't have that many, then chances are everyone was just farming, there's not as significant of a lead, not counting like outscaling or like early game fall off and things like that. Just kind of looking at the CS difference or the objective difference, then yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be that insurmountable. But when I look at the temporary one-time rebirth buff, I just hope that Otacon despawns before 25 minutes, because if you get this boss later, this could be the sole determining factor for winning or losing a game. I don't think it's going to be that bad in practice, but my overall thoughts on this guy is that it's pretty cool, right? If you think about it, having an extra epic monster is something worth planning for. My concern though is that this does make the jungler more significant of a role, which, as you know, isn't exactly something that people are too fond of, because it feels like every game, the jungle is what determines if you win or lose. The jungler gets a lot of ganks, then they snowball their laners, it feels like jungle diff because your jungler wasn't doing anything, their jungler was doing something, and then it makes you lose lane. On the jungler side of things, if let's say the jungler gets invaded by the enemy jungler and the enemy laners, and they get no help, then the jungler now no longer has control of the map and will continuously bleed out camps, but also objectives because they can't contest them. And adding an additional epic monster, while really fun for, the game to make it more interesting in the mid game, it does also mean that you now have to rely on the jungler even more than we already have been, and we've already been pretty reliant on the jungle. So, I really hope that they kind of address this long term, in that it's not just one person that decides if you win or lose the game, purely because they're the only ones who can take Smite. Like, if other champions are allowed to take Smite, like, I'd be more than happy to take Smite as a top laner. Maybe not. Maybe the mid laner might like it, or, just like mid laner. Like, there's more champions who can kind of address the fact that you do need to secure these objectives, then I do think they're fine. But right now, the game has just been so predicated on, do we have a jungler or do we have a Smite? It could just be something I'm nitpicking, but that's just me, Second thing to talk about is going to be the new feats of strength. So to kind of paraphrase what it's all about, instead of rewarding gold for first blood, first tower, or things like that, which, doesn't seem like a super creative or quantifiable or I guess impactful reward for doing so, they're making it so you get a tiny buff to your existing boots if you get these feats of strength. So it's a best of 3 system, which means, let's say for example, you score first blood, the enemy team gets first tower, but then you get the first 3 epic jungle monsters, you win the best of 3, and then you get the bonus, which encompasses a small boost to the stats of your tier 2 boots. So in the case of Ninja Tabby / Bladed Steel Caps, it's a bit more armor, but then you also have the option to purchase an additional upgrade, which is unofficially referred to as tier 3, which gives a minuscule amount of armor and movement speed, but it does give a unique passive, wherein you get a 10% physical damage shield or 10% max HP physical shield for 5 seconds on a 10-second cooldown upon taking physical damage. That's really strong. That's really strong. For only 750 gold. Like, the stats are obviously garbage, but you essentially get a mini Camille passive or a mini Malphite passive for 750 gold. Like, that's a lot. Ninja Tabby's already freaking broken. Like, granted, it's not gonna be the same effect for all the other boots. It's not going to be the same effect for Mertreads, it's not going to be the same for Lucidity, for Swifties, for mobility boots and things like that. Or it's not mobility boots anymore, it's Synchronized Souls or whatever it's called. Point being, they're probably going to be different effects, like I'm guessing Mertreads might give you, I don't know, like slow resistance or something. But for the Ninja Tabby one specifically, Tabby's has already garnered a bit of notoriety for not having a metric attached to the description to tell you how much damage it mitigates, even though statistically it does mitigate a significant amount of damage, like probably in the realm of thousands. Adding this will only make Boots Rush even more valuable because holy crap, for 1900 gold, you get, what, 30 armor, 25 armor, 12% basic attack damage reduction, and you also get a 10% max HP shield upon taking damage on a 10-second cooldown. This better get nerfed, that's all I'm saying. This better get nerfed because 10% HP physical shield is absurd for only 10-second cooldown. I can understand a 20-second cooldown, 8% HP shield, right? Like, this is basically Mountain Soul. I can't be the only one who thinks this is essentially Mountain Soul for physical damage. And if they do the same for Mertreads, then it'll be Mountain Soul for magic damage. For only 1900 gold, give or take, maybe 2000. That's insane. On one hand, I like the fact that they're actually giving a tier 3 upgrade to boots, because I hate boots as an item, since you do need it, right? Like, not having it is worse than having it. But at the same time, it doesn't feel satisfying enough to be a completed purchase. They did implement Zephyr, they re-implemented Zephyr for the AD carries to purchase to have an actual item that feels like a decently strong item, but they haven't done that for the other ones. When I look at this though, the original boots upgrade we had was like Alacrity, Captain, Home Guards, Fear, Distortion, things like that. This is a lot more game warping, which in and of itself isn't the worst out there, but it does feel way too strong for only 750 gold. I always feel like, it's just a strong item. I hope that they balance it a bit more, and the main thing is that, like, their incentive here, or the explanation, is that they added feats to give players a fun, satisfying reward for getting an advantage in the early game that wasn't just big chunks of gold that can provide very sharp swings in power. Since early game gold is very volatile and can vary in usefulness, from providing a massive power spike to doing nothing at all based on item completion, Feats was made as a system to smooth out the power that's granted by winning the early game and turn what was previously just immediate gold rewards into a fun system that gives players more options later in the game if they play very well early on. I agree with that. It is fun as a concept. Competitively speaking though, is where I'm not sure. Upgrades like these are, we want them to matter, right? That's ultimately what Riot is trying to prove, is that they want the upgrades to feel like it actually means something. But when I look at this, I'm just, man, this is gonna make the game even more snowbally than it already is. Now, as I guess a counter to that, they talk about Nexus turrets being able to respawn, which gives people the, I guess, confidence to continue advancing forward and getting stuff done in the mid to late game, even if their Nexus is exposed. Because if your Nexus towers are gone, you have to play under the assumption that you're always at risk of being backdoored, because you are, right? Like if the enemy team has teleport or someone who can move really fast or split push or take down towers quickly, someone always has to be waiting in base, or maybe two people, to stop that person from split pushing, at which point you lose complete control of the map and then can no longer contest Baron or Dragon, and then you're gonna lose no matter what anyway. So respawning Nexus turrets is a good option to, I guess, implement, in the sense that it will kind of remove the possibility of backdooring, which is an alternative win condition that can make split pushing viable. But I think when they mentioned Scion here, I think they're targeting boss, but that's just my theory. Anyways, when it comes to respawning Nexus turrets, for the most part, I think it's a fine implementation, just because I think over the years, towers have become super squishy to where they get two-shotted anyway in the mid to late game. This looks like it drags the game on a lot more, but then again, if you already destroy Nexus towers, chances are the Nexus is going to die soon anyway, right? Like, it's not, very rarely do you have the Nexus open, and then it doesn't die in the next 3 to 5 minutes, right? Like, if the Nexus towers go down, more often than not, the Nexus goes with it right after. So I don't think this will matter too much, but we'll have to see, because this could be either very prevalent or it could be very niche. It does give, it does give players or teams the option to turtle if they want to, and I did express that I think it sucks that we can't turtle anymore, because the game goes into an unwinnable state where there's, Elder Dragon plus Baron minions plus triple inhib down, things like that. But this at least implements a way for people to have a second lease on life if, let's say, they got really close to losing the game, but then they clutched it out, they saved the Nexus, and then they can kind of reestablish a bit of control over their base and a bit of safety to then start mounting a comeback. So I'm okay with this, but these two things kind of contradict each other, where this makes the game more snowbally and this makes the game more turtleable. I don't know which one will matter more. I think this one will, but I am glad that they are being considerate of the fact that the game can get snowbally, and they've implemented a system to give players the option, or give players the opportunity to fight back against one. Okay, last but not least, runes. So Axiom Arcanist makes your ultimate stronger and has a Axiom Arc effect added to it, where on takedowns you get some cooldown back. And it's going to be replacing Nullifying Orb, because Nullifying Orb is not that great. Not that it's a bad rune per se, it's good against magic damage, but Manifold Band and Nimbus Cloak are just so much better. But this one will definitely be appealing for champions that heavily rely on ultimates like Kennen or Swain or Karma, things like that. I think this will be a little bit more valuable than Manifold Band or Nimbus Cloak in that regard. Deep Ward makes it more rewarding for you to place deep wards, as the name implies, in the enemy jungle, and they get a bit more duration and more, I guess, HP in terms of like how many more auto attacks it takes to get rid of it. I don't really think this matters all that much, because as you know, deep wards typically get swept very quickly and then they get destroyed anyway. So unless they make it so, let's say, these wards can't be cleared for a while, like, for at least 10 seconds they can't be cleared, but if they do that, then it makes the wards a bit too strong. I do think they should add some kind of incentive to make them a bit more appealing. I don't think 1 HP and 45 more seconds is that great, but I think if the support is creative about it and then they manage to place down wards in an area where it's very unlikely for them to get swept, then you do get rewarded for doing so, and that you get long-lasting wards that the enemy team will not be able to detect, and you can get vision and information that way. I just don't think it's that great though. I don't think it's that impactful. Where is it going to be replacing though? Oh, never mind. Okay. Oh, these are all the red ones. I see. So, we'll see the other two, because the other two will be in competition for Deep Ward. So Sixth Sense is essentially Umbral Glaive, where if you walk near a ward, then you get vision of it and you can clear it. Or no, it will track the enemy ward, so you'll be able to, I guess, know where it is, but you can't deal with it. And then later on though, you can actually get a chance to take it out. So it's essentially Umbral Glaive. This is more practical in my opinion than Deep Ward. Supports generally don't go down the domination tree to begin with, so I think this one is kind of useless. in favor of 6th Sense, but let me check Grisly Mementos. It grants an infinitely stacking 5 trinket ability haste upon champion takedowns. I'm gonna be honest, this is the best one, I think. This is definitely more valuable than deep ward because if you can get trinkets faster, then you can get deep wards more frequently. And if you have, oracles faster, you no longer need 6th Sense because you can just clear things more often. So this one so far appears to be the most valuable one. Because if you think about how many takedowns you can get, we're talking probably 100 trinket ability haste, at which point you have half the cooldown on things like oracles, farsight, and stealth ward. I think Grisly Mementos is the best one, so they might have to tune deep ward and 6th Sense a little bit. I get the premise behind the first two, where if you can get like kind of niche applications for it, but I feel like even if you were playing a support, supports will want this more than these two, and assassins would also want this more than these two. Who else goes domination tree? Maybe some mages. They're not gonna go this though. They're gonna go the top one, which is like sudden impact and cheap shot, and the bottom one, which is like treasure hunter or bounty hunter, and then ultimate hunter, things like that. I'm okay with Axiom Arcanist. I do think that it's a welcome addition to the game because Nullifying Orb has been too niche to be taken, especially compared to Mana Flow Band and things like that. The ward changes, they're probably more interactive than Zombie Ward, Ghost Portal, and Eyeball Collection. I think at the current moment, balancing-wise, Grisly Mementos appears to be the clear better option over these two, but it might just be my opinion. Maybe some people might think Deep Ward is better. I just think this is the most consistent and practical because people are going for kills more often in solo queue anyway. Anyways, not the biggest changes to runes of course, but it's always interesting to look into, and I think runes are one of my favorite things to think about because anyone can take them, right? It doesn't matter who you're playing. Last but not least, they're addressing teleport. Alright, teleport. It's no exaggeration to say that teleport is arguably the second strongest summoner spell in the game, right behind Flash. Reason being, it's because positioning matters so much in this game. With teleport, you can have offensive and defensive connotations to it. Offensively, let's say you just scored a kill on your opponent and then you have to recall, they have to walk back to lane, but then you can teleport back and it's as if you never gave up anything, right? Like, sometimes it's actually a bad idea to kill your opponent early if you have Ignite and they have teleport, because if you have to back, you lose more from the minions and the levels and whatnot that you forfeit to walk back to base slowly. To address this, they're making it so that you get home guards from the beginning of the game, although in a weaker state. It's not as punishing to go Ignite or Ghost or Heal or things like that, and it kind of counterbalances teleport. Of course, teleport towards the mid to late game is just way too strong of a summoner spell, and it might even be better than Flash because getting from where you need to be very quickly within 4 seconds is super valuable when a single bad teamfight in the mid to late game can destroy your hopes of winning the game. That is why you see so many pro players take teleport, because it doesn't matter if you have 6 items, you have Ignite up, you have Flash up, if you're not at the fight when it's happening. So that's the whole point of teleport, and for years it's been continuously nerfed over and over again. It used to be a 3-second channel time. You used to be able to cancel it. You could teleport to whatever you wanted to before 14 minutes. They had to nerf it over and over again just to make it not like an insta-pick summoner spell. And they have to continue nerfing it more because other summoner spells just don't do enough relative to the insane macro capability you have with teleport. This version is okay, right? They make it so you travel much slower. So if you're all the way across the map, it takes you a longer time to get to where you want to be as opposed to if you're teleporting like from here to here. Oh. Whoops, I hit my desk. Anyways, it's cool, I guess. I'm assuming they make it so instead of like, let's say 4-second blink, it's more of a 8, 9, 10 second. Again, it depends on distance. They're doing this to make it more tunable to where like, oh, maybe they can adjust the speed a bit more. But I do think that summoner spells as a whole just needs to be overhauled because I think at the moment it's Flash and teleport most of the time. Like mid laners always take teleport usually, at least in pro play and stuff like that. Top laners usually take teleport, and AD carries usually take teleport. Junglers can't because smite. And then supports, they usually don't need to, but sometimes supports go teleport. So point being, teleport is in and of itself a very powerful summoner spell purely for the opportunity cost it presents relative to the other summoner spells you get. And I do think they do need to address it a bit more. Again, it opens up the door for them to balance it as opposed to a static 4-second blink, which doesn't give them much room to actually like decide how they want to do it. that about wraps up all the gameplay changes. So on one end, this is one of the more bare bones changes that they're going to be doing. Relative to like the typical seasons they do, right, where they talk about like you know, for older seasons they did an entire item overhaul, they did an entire rift overhaul, things like that. I'm not sure if they're going to be implementing these massive changes every single season like they talk about here, where there are 3 seasons and different acts, and the first one's very Noxian themed. Next one could be Shadow Isles, it could be Ionia, whatever you want to think about. And if they do that, you know, they implement big changes with each season, then I can understand why this one is a bit more bare bones. Not to say that like Otacon's not a big addition, that alone changes the fundamentals of the game greatly, and same with Feats of Strength. But when I look at this, remember at the beginning of the video I said that part of me thinks that this exacerbates the problems we have in the game even more? That's how I see it. Again, first impressions, they can change. It's not always black and white, right? Like, for all we know, this is not as bad as I might make it look, or it could be even worse than I'm making it look. My assessment of this is that it's not what I was expecting. I believe that Riot should do something very different to make League not feel like just a carbon copy of what it was before, with maybe a thing tweaked around here and there. To some extent, they have delivered on that. They added an entire new neutral objective, which actually is fairly significant. It's not like Void Grubs, which is like a tiny little thing that you can somewhat ignore if you choose to. It matters. We haven't had an epic monster, a new epic monster, since the Elder Dragon come out in a long time, right? It was just Dragon and Baron for the longest time ever. So Otacon does matter. It's hard to say. I don't know, maybe there might be a part of me that feels very pessimistic about League's future, because when I think of how the past 5 years have progressed, the experience has only just gotten worse and worse and worse when it comes to playing ranked. I know not everyone plays ranked, right? Like, some people just spend their time playing only ARAM, or the rotating game modes, or Arena, or Swarm, or regular normals, but the competitive experience of League has deteriorated far more than it really should have. The game is old, don't get me wrong. I can't help but think that there are going to be players who are really on board with these changes, and players who really hate these changes. I'm leaning more on the side of like, okay, so you know how there's cautiously optimistic? I'm cautiously pessimistic in this case, where I'm worried about the consequences of these changes, but I do see the upside for it, if that makes sense. Anyways, it's been a 40-minute long video at this point, or right now I'm looking at the runtime, it's like 38. I can probably shrink it down to about 30, but we'll end things off here. Let me know your thoughts of the new 2025 changes in the comments down below. For those of you who wanted to know what I look like, I hope you enjoyed the face cam. I'll implement it more in the future. I've become a bit more comfortable showing my face on camera, but yeah. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server. And check out my other, I guess, live commentary discussions if you haven't yet. You can watch my Hot Takes series. I have 3 episodes, I think. You can watch that if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.